he's actually figured out that what he's looking for, this ultimate return to his true self, is whole and complete within. And so his whole process of self-cultivation consists not of seeking, not of wanting, not even of going to teachers anymore, but going through progressively deeper states of quieting his mind, stilling his discursive thoughts and emotions. And as he peels away layers and layers of this busyness, this hyper busyness of mind and body and emotions, he gets into deeper and deeper states of clarity and awakening. And he sees, ultimately, he sees his nature, he sees his original mind. And what's fascinating about this, it's unexpected. And it's unexpected not because it's strange or unusual, it's unexpected because he's been away from it for so long. And so it's called a return. It's called coming back. And in that awakening, he has a realization, and I won't go into this too much tonight, we'll go into this next week, but he has awakened, he says, this nature, this Buddha nature, this awakening nature is Bu-ar, non-dual. Now this is really where we're going to start going with this. Han Shan has been hinting about this when he says everything is a manifestation of this mind. And this nature is non-dual, meaning completely at one with the whole of the universe. They're describing the fundamental nature of human beings. But what happens is we make things into two. We make things into two and into four and so on and so forth. So we divide up our consciousness, which is whole and complete, into these fragmented pieces. And as we fragment and further, we get more and more lost. And they call this like wandering in the woods, getting lost at a sea where waves are hitting us from all sides and so on and so forth. And so to come back to this theme, I wanted to show that it is not unique to Buddhism. And I would use Buddhism here with a small b as the traditions collectively that teach or move us towards our innate or inherent wisdom and the capacity for awakening. So I'm using small b rather than capital P. And this is held to be universally available. We've been doing stuff with other quotes, quoting other things. Last time we did the classic of purity and stillness. Now I'm going to ask you to jump. Here I'm talking about non-movement. I'm asking him to jump, but that's okay. We're going to get into just remembering some of the text we went through. Oh, that's okay. Go to the fish. That's a good one. Yeah. So that's one. Remember we did this last time? The idea that people are born in the Tao. This born in the Tao means we have this intrinsic nature whole and complete. That's our capacity. We're born into that, just as fish are born into water. Okay? Now, the next part of that passage says, if the fish stays deep in the pond, in the pool, it preserves itself and all its needs are met. If people are born to the Tao, again, now watch the language here. Sink into the deep shadows of meditation and non-attachment, meaning not grasping, not seeking, not craving. Forget fighting and concerns of stress and anxiety. They return, they come back to this natural wholeness where nothing is lacking. So then the last line is, all fish need to do is get lost in the water. All people need to do is get lost in the Tao. Lost in the Tao is the return. Okay? So lost in the Tao is the model that's given for our reuniting with our spiritual nature. And you see all the language is subtracting. I want to point this out. All the language goes against our anxiety, which is to seek and to grab and to grasp and to hold and want more. All the language here and all the language the Buddha is using, and even by his own example, is subtracting, disentangling, dismantling all of the reaching out, the web of things we wound our identity into and fragmented our consciousness into it. So the consciousness, instead of being vast and great, collapses into all these things and all these kind of fragmented identities. You following what I'm saying? So here, the language you read, you always get this feeling of a quieting, a letting go, almost a simplicity. And it's so simple, we just trust it. We say, oh, it's got to be smarter than that. There's got to be some secret here. Even when, in the Sixth Patriarch Sutra, when, remember, he gets the awakening, and the teacher says, now in the monastery, everybody's competing and wants it, so your life is in danger because I've entrusted the robe and bowl to you, so get out of here. And someone chases him. Who chases him?
A lot of people.
Well, a lot of people, but who's the first one to catch up to him? This 4-star general. Yeah, he catches up to him. And he basically, the patriarch puts a robe and bowl on a rock, and then he shouts to him, he says, you can't steal it. That's not how you get it. And so he's like, well, then how do you get it? And he says, you already got it. He says, could you be more clear? And he explains, he says, whole and complete, there's nothing to get. You already have it. And he goes, wow, far out. He has an awakening. And the next thing he does, is there something else? And you can see the Sixth Patriarch good. That's the tendency. It's right at that turning. We're right on it. We have it. It's whole and complete. And then we think, maybe there's something else. And that wanting something else is what he is talking about, Han Shan's talking about, of how we move away from the whole and complete. So this one, by the way, we found out where this, who tracked this down for me? Or did I track it down and send it to somebody?
He won.
He won. Did you track this down? And this is from? Yeah, you lost your voice. Oh, okay. You're supposed to get lost in the way, but not lose your voice. This is actually good, losing your voice. No, I'm saying one of the things that cultivators do often, because they get so caught up in things, and the sense organs go mad chasing things, part of the return is to reel in, so to speak, the sense organs. So one of the first things that people practice, this was one of Hung Shu's first practices, was to reel in the mouth or the tongue and to take a vow of silence. And part of his return of coming back was not going out through the mouth. And when he did this, my teacher said, you open your mouth and you chi scatters. You wag your tongue and you create offenses. So he said, close your mouth, gather back your tongue, you'll have more chi and you won't create so many offenses. And immediately, it worked. Hung Shu could feel his essential energy returning by not doing that. So, even though you didn't do it as a vow, it happened by accident. Capitalizing. Okay? Some people practice returning the hearing, not listening to all the extraneous sounds. They begin to go into quiet spaces, and they use the recitation of Guan Yin Bodhisattva's name to return the hearing to listen to their essential nature. Okay? Some people practice bringing back the tongue in terms of talking, but flavors. Realizing I'm gone out, I'm a flavor addict, I'm a foodie. I gotta have flavor, 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 flavor. So they start to reduce their flavors and just get down to very simple food, not even necessarily seasoned or whatnot. That's one way to do it. Eyes, ears, nose, with smells, you reduce all fragrances. It's another practice of cultivation. Now, on the other side, if you reduce fragrances, we won't go into this again tonight, but next week, the text will talk about this a little bit. If you reduce the fragranting or the perfuming, then not only do you not attach to fragrances, but you also get to see and smell things as they really are. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail here, but this is one of the contemplations that monks and nuns do, and you as lay people can try this as well. Sometimes it's better if you practice this alone. You get where I'm going with this. In other words, the infatuation with the human body, which Han Shan is going to go into next week, is largely a delusion. Because we're not fascinated with the human body, we're fascinated with the making up of the human body into a Disney-like model thing. And that's done through appearances, and it's also done through fragrances and so on and so forth. You know where I'm going? So if you remove those, there's less attractiveness because the attraction is to the perfumes, the cosmetics, and so on and so forth. But if that stopped, right? So even the mouth, naturally it's beautiful and you want to kiss the mouth. That's the romance. But if you don't brush the teeth, then it's not so lovely. So people, according to both some early Greek philosophers and the Buddhists, say, if we did not do this, the reality of the body would be seen for what it is. But we habitually do the opposite and therefore continue the mystique. There's different ways to break this. Anyhow, I'm digressing and going ahead too far. Now you go to the Purity of Stillness Classic and you see the same thing. Here, this is an early Taoist text that says, our nature, our spirit is naturally pure, our mind disturbs it, our mind is naturally still, but desires entice it away. Now, again, go back to naturally pure, naturally still. Naturally pure, naturally still. That's our inherent capacity. But it gets enticed away through unchecked desires, and our mind, the restless mind that doesn't know when to stop, wants more, then disturbs that purity. And then he goes on, we read this last week, he said, if you can pull these back, if you can keep the mind from wanting more, disturbed, you will naturally be pure. And if you don't let your desires and lusts pull you away, you will naturally be still, and in that you'll return and be back in the Tao again. Okay, so this view of human nature is why there's meditation. So the meditation isn't something, the meditation according to the text is nothing. There's no meditation in Buddhism per se. But the meditation was invented by the teachers only because we can't find and return to the innate purity and stillness, and so we need a corrective device, not to get something. I want to stress this, really important. Meditation is not to get something. It's to stop the outflowing, it's to stop the scatteredness. So it's actually, and Han Shan, what's the word Han Shan uses? Remember that? Did we do that yet? Are we coming to that? The staunching? Did we do that staunching yet? Oh. Right. He talks about staunching. Everybody knows what staunching is? Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. Staunching. Who's in?
That's right.
You're shaking your head. You don't know what it is?
No, it's right.
No, you're shaking. You're going like so. The woman behind us is going this way. So I got two heads. You know what it is? You don't know what it is. Can you explain what it is?
It's what you do to stop blood flow. Put pressure on something. Cauterize an artery.
Cauterize is another term. Do you know that one? Have you ever been bleeding profusely? What did you do?
Pressure.
That's called staunching. Okay? Now you can put pressure, but sometimes they also use sharp heat, and it cauterizes it and seals it so that it doesn't go out anymore. So Han Shan uses this metaphor to say meditation isn't about a journey of exploration into some faraway place to get something. And in fact, one of the early texts that we read, and we were reading biographies, one of the monks talked about how because he didn't have a good teacher, and he didn't read the text, he thought he would just go and meditate and get enlightened. He wasted years of his practice, what he called spiritual sightseeing. In other words, he would get into the meditation posture, get it and let his mind just sort of drift and wander through all these realms of conscious, unconscious fairyland, he called it.
Is that similar to the story in Avatanska, you Goodwill?
What did he do? No, he did a different journey.
But isn't that the same thing as the journey in his mind?
But the journey was a return. Remember? What's interesting, she's talking about an epic in the Avatamsaka of this young boy in good wealth who goes seeking enlightenment. Where does he get at the end?
I haven't finished yet.
Okay, so I won't answer your question now, but you're asking, is he on a journey? And I say yes, but the surprise of surprises is the end, and I won't spoil it for you. So when you get to the end, you'll realize why I'm not going to tell you the answer. But it really isn't a journey.
It isn't a journey?
It is, but it isn't. So until you get to the end, you won't realize it. When you get to the end, you're going to go, oh, now I get it. But I'll spoil it for you if I tell you the end. Right?
Okay.
It's a good read. During the holidays, just do that. Go shopping, read Sudana. So where was I going? Oh, so the return, the staunching of the flow. So the meditation, and that's what's really funny, why you don't need anything when you come in here. You don't need anything to do this. I mean, yeah, the cushions help, and, and so on and so forth. But what's happening is you're stopping. You're stopping. It's not what you do when you do meditation, it's what you're not doing. I can't emphasize this much. It's like a trick. I'm sorry, it is a trick. Because you're coming in and I'm going to the Berkeley Buddha Monastery, and we're going to do a meditation. And I'm seeking enlightenment. Okay, that's cool. That's a trick. Because when you come here, you're not doing anything. Now, people come in and look and think they're doing something. They must have some secret they're working on, and they're all quiet about it, but they're doing it. But you're not. It's what you're not doing that makes the difference. And so what this text is saying, by not letting the eyes wander, not letting the ears wander, not letting this flavor mongering go on, quieting the body, quieting the energy, the very quieting is the fullness returning. Those of you who have done meditation retreats will see this. You'll see people in the retreat on the first day they come in, get off the bus, the cab, or whatnot. They have this kind of whirly swirl of energy about them and a complexion that's a little bit jaded. But by the second or third day, and some people it's by the second or third sit, just by doing nothing, not talking, not going out, just doing the recitation and the meditation, you see a fullness. You can see it. You don't have to be a mystic. You can see a radiance start to return to their color. And this is the natural staunching. When the flow is staunched, the blood just naturally then regenerates itself and you're whole and healthy again. So this is so kind of counterintuitive to our normal ways. And what the patriarchs are saying, it's counterintuitive because we've allowed ourselves to get caught in this flow. So long we've got caught in this flow that sometimes we don't even know to return. Now this is where I want to go tonight with Mencius, okay? So let's look first at the line of the Han Shan. I'm just using it as a springboard to get into Mencius. He says, resolve to face this directly. Once you know sort of the stuff I've been talking about here, once you know that this is in fact the path back to your wholeness, the path back to your awakening directly, then he says, decisively reverse the flow. Shed all your previous ideas, understandings, and calculations. They're completely useless. So if you thought you were going to get it by seeking, if you thought you were going to get it by intelligence or discursive reasoning, or by reading a lot of books, or even by blind faith alone, none of this is going to get you there. You have to, he says, decisively reverse the flow. You have to, in the one tradition they talk about Zhiguan, stopping and contemplating. The Zhi is the stopping the flow. You have to bring that discursive life and energy back into simplicity, back into a singleness. Do you know the word jettison? You know that one? No, I know you do. I'm just looking behind you because you got. It's really great. If any question I ask, one hand goes this way, the other goes. You know jettison? No. Okay. So what is jettison?
Throw stuff overboard to get rid of excess weight.
Right. So the famous movie you see, the plane's flying, it's low on fuel. and it's losing altitude. And they're thinking, can we make it back over the sea? How do we get more distance and mileage? Well, we reduce the weight. So they start to jettison, throw things off the plane that are, increasing the weight there, increasing the drag and the fuel and so forth, until they're stripped down to almost nothing. And then they're able to make it back. That's the jettison idea. So here, the idea is you jettison in your life those things that are weighting you down.
So like less shopping.
So all of you within your own sphere, your own mind, make your own list. I mean, I'm really good at making lists for other people, but when it comes to the things that weight me down, they don't. Those are the things that make me happy. Those are the things that are essential, right? But then you see sometimes what we think is essential is actually too much. So the secret is, part of your meditation when you're in this space is to start to do the calculus. This kind of calculus, what's too much? Where do I have too much? And it's not just things I'm talking about. It's attitudes, it's ideas, it's unresolved wants and cravings and so forth. Where is there too much? The key to the whole Buddhist thing is what we will call one of the zu, and it means enough. Enough. Zhi. To know enough is the key, from the Buddhist point of view, to happiness and awakening. Knowing when to stop. So there's a phrase, knowing when to stop, never in danger. Zhi changwu, knowing enough, always joy and happy. But the key is taking stock where that point is. Because if I say jettison and simplify, you can go to the extreme and have too little. And then you will bring on another problem. So it's finding the balance, finding that key point of enough. Really tough, really tough. Okay, so we take Han Shan and we look at him in this expression, return decisively, and now I want to go and finish the thing I promised, which is Mencius. And do we have the Chinese for Mencius? Did you put that in? Okay.
Which one?
Okay, someone help me on my pronunciation again. Is it second tone? Niu. Niu Shan. Shan. First tone. First tone for the mountain, right? Second tone for Shan? First. Okay, you're still talking, now you're doing fingers. That's okay. Niu Shan means Cow Mountain. So here's Cow Mountain, and the Chinese, we're going to have to wait. I don't think we can show them simultaneously. Now, the reason I chose this passage is to show you that this idea of the innate, not depravity, but the innate wholeness and the innate potential for awakening is part of the South and the East Asian traditions, generally. And that contrasts widely with our understanding of most of the Western traditions. So, it's a very different view of human nature, but it's gone along with everything I was just saying to you previously. Now we did Zhuangzi, we did the Taoist stuff, we did the Guanzi, we're doing all kinds of Buddhists, they all have this. Now we're going to do Mencius. Mencius is who?
A Chinese philosopher.
A Chinese philosopher. Good. When did he live?
A student of Confucius.
Huh?
Was he a student of Confucius?
Well, he wasn't exactly a student of Confucius, but he came after Confucius. But he sees himself as following in that tradition. So just as Zhuangzi is considered to be the follower of Lao Tzu, then Mencius is considered to be the follower of Confucius. Mencius wrote a lot more. And you can read it, it's basically just called the Works of Mencius. It's really cool stuff. He's the one that says, we have this whole and complete, it's natural to us, but we lose it. And we get caught up in the busyness of our lives, we forget who we are, we go rambling through until we get old and we're dying and we thought, what was this all about that I was doing? How did I get lost? And he says, now, I'll tell you, the average farmer in China is smarter than you. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, when a farmer in China loses his pig or his sheep, even though he's got 100 more, he'll take his lantern going out into the rainy, stormy night, trying to find that one lost sheep or pig until he gets it back. But Mencius says, you, to this disciple, lose your original heart, Bunxin, and you don't even know to go look for it. So it's a passage to indicate that what is most essential and fundamental, when we lose sight of it, we don't even think to look for it again. We just go on living as if it's ordinary. So this passage is from Mencius. The reason I like it, you'll see, but it's also the passage that I mentioned to you, Arthur Waley, one of the great translators, early translators of the Chinese philosophy, including Zhuangzi and Lao Tzu and Japanese literature and plays and poets and so forth, had this read at his funeral. This was the piece that he wanted to be read at his funeral. And I think it tells you something about him that he would be drawn to this piece. I really love this piece too, but I'm too young to tell anybody what to do at my funeral. So, the Cow Mountain was once covered with lovely trees, but it is near the capital of a great state. People came with their axes and choppers. They cut the woods down, and the mountain has lost its beauty. Yet even so, the day air and the night air came to it. Rain and dew moistened it. Here and there, fresh sprouts began to grow, but soon, cattle and sheep came along and browsed on them. Now, browsed, everybody, it doesn't mean like shopping online, browsing. I'm sorry, it's an agricultural. What's browse? Anybody? When sheep browse, grazing, they're chewing it up, right? They're not just looking at it. They browsed on them, and in the end, the mountain became gaunt and bare as it is now. And seeing it thus gaunt and bare, people might imagine that it was woodless from the start. Okay, first passage, just pause. So he's taking a mountain, a beautiful mountain. This is, Mencius's time was way before the Industrial Revolution or anything like this. Think of the Chinese landscape paintings, those deep, rich landscapes with the beautiful mountains and the streams running through them. It was once covered, by the way, this was a description that the early pilgrims gave of Manhattan. Just passing this out for you. They had one that they wrote very similar to this. And what they were describing was what we now know as Manhattan. They got off, they got on shore, they jumped over and drank the water. Try that now in Manhattan. So, again, an interesting parallel. Covered with lovely trees, near a capital. So you've got to read into this. There's a lot of interpretation for metaphor and analogy. What is the capital of the great state? From a Buddhist point of view, the mad mind. Which then the axes and choppers cut the woods down. What's that? False thoughts, unchecked desires. They chop into your nature. But the day air and the night air came, and rain and dew moistened it, and it returned. Fresh sprouts began to grow. What's that? Again, thinking through the Buddhist metaphors. The dew and the moisture. Well, it's Guanyin sweet dew. Okay? It's recitation. It's precepts. It's meditation practices. It's quieting. It's stilling. And the fresh sprouts begin to grow. Okay? Bodhi sprouts. But now we up it. We bring in the cattle and the sheep. Heavy duty. I'm not going to go into what that's the heavy afflictions. This is the klesha. Okay, fun now. We bring those in and let them chew on it for a while. A little anger, a little jealousy, a couple of doses of greed and lust, a little laziness mixed in so we don't have to change those habits. Boom. And we're down. And you then look at yourself and think, wow, I must have been like this from the very start. Now what he says, now just as the natural state of the mountain was quite different from what we now appears, so too in every person. Of course, we've done that. It's natural, but let's go. Though little though it may be apparent, That's an interesting parenthesis. So too in every person, though little it may be apparent. Every person has this potential, but it may have been so shrunk that it's hardly even visible anymore. Whereas surely one's feelings, this is Ren, of decency and kindness, and if these good feelings are no longer there, it is that they have been tampered with, hewn down, which means to saw or strip down, with axe and bill. What's a bill? It's an ancient chopping device to take, chainsaw. As each day dawns, they are assailed anew. Now this means once a habit energy starts, then each day, instead of being a chance for renewal for us, it is, but what happens is the habit energy starts to increase. And before we know it, each day becomes shorter and shorter in our potential to see ourselves truly. And we become then successfully established in our life pattern. As Cummings says, children can remember but only a few, and down they forgot as up they grew. What chance is our nature any more of that mountain of keeping its beauty if we assail it like this every day? Now, this is interesting, the next one. But to us too, as the mountain comes the air of the day, the air of the night, just as at dawn, indeed we have for a moment in a certain degree a mood in which our promptings and aversions, what we like and dislike, come to near to being what is proper to being a person. So he's saying there are moments in our lives when we have these, and he calls it dawn, which from the Buddhist point of view, awakenings. There's moments when, in the quiet stillness, you can take this literally. Some of you know this. When you wake up in the morning, really fresh, and the day's just about, you can almost feel that wholeness and fullness coming back. You can almost feel that potential. And that's what he's talking about. But he's also talking about, in a larger sense, that it's something you might feel at different times in your life, when suddenly you get a glimpse, I don't have to be this way. I can pull back and return to something. But here he says something is sure to happen before the morning is over. Maybe before we even get out of bed. By which these better feelings are either checked or perhaps utterly destroyed. And in the end, when they have been checked again and again, the night air is no longer able to preserve them, and soon our feelings and minds become as those of wild beasts. And someone might then make the mistake about us as about the mountain and think there was nothing any good in us from the very start. But now, he says, yet assuredly our present state of heart and mind is not truly what we began with. Now he's saying, what we've allowed it to become, overgrown and choked with weeds, or in this case, gaunt and bare, is not what we began with, but what we have let happen to it. So now you're going back, originally it wasn't that way, and fundamentally it's not that way, not even in a time sense, but in an immediate now it's not that way. But unless we can change the habits, unless we can change those stirrings, it will continually be eroded again and again and again. What's beautiful to me about this is it matches basically the way in the environment, the natural environment works. Right, I'm sure has told you the story about the Cuyahoga River. You know that one, when he was going up the river that caught on fire. So I've told you that one. Nobody remembers? Yeah, you remember the river that caught on fire. It wasn't that way to begin with, but it caught on fire because of all the industries and pollution and pouring it into it. And so every summer the river would catch on fire, and he said the fire trucks would go down and put out the fire in the river, which he thought as a kid was fun. You'd watch the fire trucks hook their hoses and pour water in the river to put out the fire. And they got a Blue Ribbon Committee to say, how can we save this river? And they're going to put anti-pollutants in and all this sort of stuff. And someone finally said, why don't you just leave it alone and see what happens? Which was a dumb idea at the time, but it carried because it was the least expensive. And within a year or two, the river returned. The fish came back and so on and so forth. Those of you who want to see another natural example of this, I just found, I was listening to something about, I guess it's the Colorado River that goes into a delta down near Mexico. And because people have taken all the water out of the Colorado River, that water doesn't get down there anymore. It's all used up. And what used to be a bird estuary, just beautiful, rich with wildlife and fantastic trees, so much so that they wanted to call it the eighth wonder of the world, is now this absolute cesspool. Just completely dried up and desiccated. And so one group got all their money together to buy up all the water they could along the river so that it wouldn't be used. And then at one spring, they released all that water. It was just a one-time shot. And the water got down to the delta again. And guess what happened? And then the delta had been like this for 30, 40 years. Just a terrible, not a postcard thing, he said. Hi, I'm not down in the delta. It was within a couple weeks, birds started coming back. The strange trees started growing again. And this whole thing just went. And of course, then the water dried up again and that's gone. The other example, if you want to look at the marshes in Iraq. Those of you who are familiar with Iraq and know there's a group called the Marsh People, and they live among these reeds and these floating islands of water and reeds. And there's more diversity of wildlife and birds there than any place else in the world. But one of the last rulers decided to show his macho control of nature and cut off all of that. One of the reasons was he didn't like the people there because they weren't in favor of him, so just dry up the marsh. That's what he did, and this whole place just went. And then a team of scientists with some money went in and got the waters to return. This is worth watching. It's a PBS special. You should watch it. And you're looking at this total desert ruined place, and all of a sudden the camera's going, and the first bird comes back. And then the second bird, and the third bird. And then you see fishes jumping, and nobody knows where they came from. They're sitting there, and they can't figure out. For most of them, they thought, and they wrote off 6 species of these birds. They wrote off as extinct because they were never seen again. And as soon as the water came back, these extinct species came back. Now, if extinct species can come back, surely we can return from. So look at his last line. So he says, if rightly tended, no creature but thrives. But if neglected, no creature but pines away. If we tend to ourselves, we will thrive, no matter how bad it's gotten. But if we neglect it, it's going to go away. And so he says, now he quotes his teacher. So Confucius says, hold fast to it and you keep it. What is this? This mind, what Han Shan is talking about. Guard this mind. Hold fast to it. Don't let it slip. Let it go and it'll stray. You know that through your meditation practice. You're off at a little second, it's gone. And you reel it back, and you hold it, and then it goes again. This is how mercurial it is. And I missed my last lines. You got the last lines? There we go. For its comings and goings have no time or place, and no one knows where it will bide. Surely it was his heart, sin, that he was talking about. So this is the passage from Confucius' Kalma. But you see, of all the ones that we read so far, to me this is the most poetic almost and lyrical and graphic about the nature. The Taoist stuff is very direct, but this one really maps it out. And also, there's a confirmation to this because you can see it in the natural world, and we're part of the natural world. And that's why often in Buddhism, when people cultivate to get back to their banshin, their original nature, they go into nature. Because nature becomes a mirror. It's almost like a teacher to remind us that that is innate within us, just as it's innate within the natural world. And I say this because I think for Americans in particular, we have an affinity with nature because of our traditions. That the wildness or the areas of the mountains where there's less civilization are many ways close to us because not again, for what they offer, but what they leave us free from. And so people will go into the national parks, will go to the seashores, will go to these places to discover something in themselves again that's akin to this original nature. And so I think there's a deep tradition here where, in a sense, the spiritual is connected to the natural. And again, you see this in Mencius, this connection too. So often, you go on a vacation, not the cruises, excuse me, okay? Where you go from shopping mall to shopping mall, and they're called islands, and you go, but you really go on a vacation. You go into Yosemite, or you're going to Glacier, or you just hang out at the ocean for a day. And you allow that to work on you, things strip away, simplicity returns, and you're reminded with a momentary stirring of something that you've lost. Okay? So if you look at a lot of the nature writing in America, you'll see this theme. And some of those people were the first to draw near to Buddhism, like Thoreau, who goes into nature to find himself, but also then finds Buddhism through that process. And think of Robert Frost. Do you know Robert Frost? You know Robert Frost? Yeah, I know you do. You're nodding. Do you know Robert Frost? No. Okay. So, quick one, Robert Frost in Atlanta. Robert Frost says, people go to the ocean to find themselves. So he said, people on the shore, they stand and look one way, they turn their backs on the land and stare at the sea all day. As long as it takes to pass a ship's rising hull, the wetter sand like glass reflects the passing gull. The land may vary more, but whatever the truth may be, they turn their back on the land and they stare out at the sea. They cannot look out far, they cannot look in deep, but when was there ever a bar to any watch they keep? He's expressing the idea that the ocean, because of its vast nothingness and nature, is the mirror for us finding ourselves again. So next time you just go past the beaches, watch what people are doing. They're turning their back on the land, they're looking out at sea. What are they looking at? Nothing. Ooh, isn't that kind of Buddhist, the value of nothing, emptiness? Right. Okay, we'll stop there. Next week we'll go into Han Shan as he takes us through the body and breaking attachments and so on and so forth. But one passage tonight, and then I've kept my promise to do Mencius. So, no questions, I assume? If they are, save them for next week. Any announcements?
Yeah, after class we do have a little reception in the back. We invite you to attend.
Well, we're getting soft. We're having a reception now. Okay, we're going to do the transference in English. Those, excuse me, those who want the Chinese for this could ask Locke, right? Locke, you have it?
Yep.
Okay. And the poetry from last week also, Iwan gave them Chinese.
Our eyes as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If you will hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving purity, bring their minds away to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all whose sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and